Hi everyone, it's Jen. Wanted to share with you a story. I was sitting at, this was years ago, was sitting at a Wendy's fast food restaurant, and the carload of kids was on the other end, and I was sitting alone in a booth, and I saw the assistant manager limping. So I just said out loud to her, I said, "Oh, it's got to be so stinky to have to work when you're hurting so." And she's such a sweetie. She came over and she just said, "Oh, she's fine," although you could see the pain on her face. And then she asked if I needed anything, and that's when my unexplainable started. What happens is I'm making a hand motion with my right hand over my torso, and messages just, I don't know, I get this feeling when incoming comes in. So I've learned to honor them over the years, and I'm sharing these stories totally out of order because they started off small and then they ended up becoming bigger. But anyhow, so I'm kind of jumping to a more larger one. So I was being prompted to ask her if I could lay my hands on her, and I didn't want to because I only did that with my children when they let me. They're too old now, but I don't even have to lay my hands. I could just like swipe the bad energy away. And I didn't even know there was a thing called Reiki. I didn't know there was a thing in some people's holy books. So I've said this before, I didn't grow up with a religion or anything like this. So anyhow, I just did it on my own. But but I asked her because the prompt feeling was just gets larger and larger until I honor it. And I only receive things because I ask only those who have my highest good intended may come and stay, and I also just ask if it's in my highest good and the other person's highest good. So okay, so I did it, and I asked her, there's a language barrier, and having lived in Madrid for 5 years, I could communicate in Spanish. And I just quickly tell her, I have nothing to sell. I just sometimes can see things, know things, do things, feel things, and I'm being prompted to ask if I could put my hand on her. And so she was willing. She stood next to me, and she spread out her arms just a little bit away from her hips and closed her eyes. I mean, she was ready. And then I said, "Well, where does it hurt?" And before she could answer, my hand just automatically, like a magnet, was pulled to a certain part of her back. Now, I thought, earthly Jen thought that it was her legs because, she was limping. But then she opens her eyes and looks at me and she goes, "How did you know?" And I said, "That's what I'm saying. I don't know how this works, but I've got a front row seat to these and it's beautiful." So anyhow, so then my hand got really, so she closed her eyes and I closed my eyes and my hand got so hot. And this is the part where a lot of some religious groups of religious people will say, "Oh, it's in my holy book," but then I'll lose them with the next part. I've talked about in the Minds movies, I've mentioned how sometimes I can see things. Well, then I see movies in my forehead, and if I point to my forehead, well, that belongs to another religion. So I just think, unexplainable is bigger than one religion. And I don't mean to offend anybody, it's just from my experience. So anyhow, so then I used to also be a foodie, and so I frequently get food references so that I can understand it. If I was shown a symbol of the organ that I'm touching or whatever in the body, I wouldn't know what they're talking about. I'm not medically educated at all. So anyhow, it was a fist, and that's a personal symbol for something bad. So whatever was hurting her was something bad. And then the Sprite Zero or Serum Mist, shoot, I do not like to give away corporate logos, but anyhow, whatever. So a carbonated drink, clear drink, was taking away, and I am not saying that these drinks will do this. This was just a symbol at the time. So these carbonated drinks, and I finally came up with the word later, slowly dissipated the fist. And it wasn't like the bubbles were carrying the badness somewhere else. It just dissipated. And before you knew it, the fist, well, it felt like forever, because I was a little awkward, like she might be appeasing a crazy customer. But anyhow, and then the fist disappeared, and my hand, like, then it was over, and all of a sudden I'm aware that I'm touching a stranger, and I drop my hand, and then she whips around, and she's just blah, 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 in Spanish, and I cannot understand it as quickly as I spoke it before. So, and she just was saying, did you feel how hot it got? Oh my gosh, I think it's better. Then she practiced walking. She was tentative, and then she just started walking. Then she started skipping, and then she was tapping her coworkers, and then, just skipping around the store, and then she'd like point to me like, yep, she's the one that did it. I'm like, no, not me. And it just came through me.